1941, December 7th, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack also was made on all naval and military activities on the principal island of Oahu.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The sudden and shocking attack on Pearl Harbor and the subsequent war on Japan caused the lives of thousands of Japanese Americans to be changed forever. February 19, 1942 was when the internment was established. It gave the military the power to rip Japanese Americans from their homes with no legal reason. This was the terror they lived through. Two very important court cases during this time were Hirobayashi versus United States and Korematsu versus United States. These two court cases talked about very important matters like curfew and the internment itself. Hirobayashi's case was about the curfew. Gordon Hirobayashi was an American citizen. He believed that it was not fair that he can only be out till 8 p.m. He felt that this was wrong and brought this up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that it was okay for them to do this because of the country's current status. Korematsu's case was considered to be more important than the Hirobayashi case, since it was about the internment itself. It can be said that the Korematsu case is more known and overshadowed the Hirobayashi case. Fred Korematsu did not follow the internment and went to the Supreme Court to gain back his rights. He did not win, and like before with Hirobayashi, the Supreme Court did not rule in his favor. The judicial branch would likewise rule against the civil rights of Japanese Americans. The Supreme Court prioritized the safety of Americans over the rights of a minority. Here is a short video clip of Fred Korematsu telling his experiences many years later when he tried to clean his slate of his prior doings.
I wasn't afraid to speak up, because it was unconstitutional what they did to the Japanese Americans, putting them in concentration camps. As a judge, she said that the government should think twice before they do anything like this again.
During the internment, many Japanese American constitutional rights were taken away from them. One amendment was the sixth one. The Sixth Amendment states that it protects the right to a fair and speedy public trial by jury, including the rights to be notified of accusations, to confront the accuser, to obtain witness, and to retain counsel. This right was taken away from the Japanese Americans. The Japanese Americans had no idea why they were being sent to internment camps, only that it was because of their race. This was wrong and against the Constitution. I was lucky enough to be able to speak with survivors of the internment. Their names are the Masadas. They told me their sad stories about living in the camps and how they survived through it. They also answered many of my questions. One message that the Masadas wanted me to express to you was that our government used a lot of euphemisms. Internment camps are for aliens of our enemy countries. 2/3 of the 120,000 incarcerated were Americans, not aliens of Japan. They were not in internment camps. They were in concentration camps. It is unfair of us to consider them inside internment camps since most of them were American citizens. The first question that I asked the Masadas was, what was life like for you?
Our family of 8 lived in one room with one light bulb. There was no privacy for any of us. There was one room only for sleeping in our room. School was limited in supplies. Food was not what we were used to. Wheaties, orange, marmalade, apple butter, lots of pancakes. Milk was limited for growing children. Not much to do for girls. I was a Girl Scout for a short time.
Saburo.
To say the least, life was not normal. Our family bought our first farm of our own in my sister's name because discriminatory laws prevented my immigrant parents from buying any property, although they had been contributing residents of the U.S. since 1917. We always worked hard in the vineyards and studied hard at school. While in the concentration camp, there was nothing for me to do but to play, and I didn't study very much. Like most families with children, I ate in the mess hall with my friends and never with my parents as we had done before. Like most families, family life was missing during the camp years. After 5 months in a temporary detention center, we were transferred to a permanent concentration camp in the swampland in southeast Arkansas. It turned extremely cold when we arrived, and without any heat in our barrack, and impacted by the trauma of the incarceration, my father caught pneumonia and died in a makeshift barrack hospital 3 weeks after our arrival in Arkansas. We were not able to grieve his loss in a normal way with relatives and friends. Everything was camp life, and nothing was normal for me.
As you can see, that Marion and Saburo's life was extremely difficult and hard during this time. It's crazy to think that our country that we're living in right now did this to innocent people. The second question that I asked the Masadas was, who do you feel was responsible for the situation? Marion wrote,
Lieutenant General John DeWitt's recommendation to President Franklin D. Roosevelt led to his Order 9066 to incarcerate all Japanese Americans, aliens and non-aliens. He did not have the integrity to say citizens.
Saburo said,
Lieutenant General DeWitt, who was an out-and-out racist who was in charge of the Western Command on the West Coast. He swallowed the anti-Japanese propaganda of spying and sabotage and disloyalty by the Japanese population living on the West Coast. For 40 years leading up to the bombing of Pearl Harbor by Imperial Japan, this anti-Japanese movement campaigned to rid the West Coast of all people of Japanese ancestry.
The third question that I asked the Masadas was, do you blame the U.S. for their actions? Marion wrote,
To look for blame is not helpful at this point in our life. It only leads to anger, resentment, and hurts us more than is helpful. It happened to us, and we just did the best we could under the circumstances and moved on with our daily life. In a Japanese saying, out of adversity comes good, and it has been proven so far for us.
My fourth question to the Masadas was, what do you think people could have done to stop this? Saburo wrote,
Decent Americans who knew better kept silent for the most part. Some did protest the unjust executive order 9066 of the President and the unjust incarceration order of General DeWitt, but their voices were drowned out by the public media and propaganda of the anti-Japanese movement. We had no voice, no power, and no one to advocate for us. So we were like victims of incest, violated by our own country that we loved, respected, and obeyed.
September 11, 2001, 4 planes were hijacked by terrorists who were part of one of the main terrorist organizations, the Taliban. Post these attacks on our country, George W. Bush signed the USA Patriot Act. This act is an acronym for the Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. This act was put into place by our government. It allowed them to take away the privacy of Americans. Our government had the responsibility to protect our country and the people within. Yet with this act of security, the repercussions caused our rights and privacies to be taken away. Our government could track our library records, business records, and even conduct surveillances. This relates with how our government after Pearl Harbor had the responsibility to protect our people, even if that meant taking away the rights of Japanese Americans. This may be ethically wrong, but our government felt that it was their responsibility, in both cases of history, to place the well-being of our country over the unjust stripping of rights of American citizens.